Okay, so Cameron, we're going to begin our coverage of season 2 of The Bear today, looking specifically at the first half, episodes 1 through 5. We'll be diving deep into some of the details of these episodes, the themes, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we expect perhaps in some of the episodes to come. But we are going to spoil details for those first 5 episodes, so be sure you've seen those if you'd like before this conversation. So. Just general thoughts. I have, sort of two main questions. What do you think about the first 5 episodes you've seen? And you and I have talked about this ad nauseum. What do you think about this philosophy of dropping all the episodes at once like they did?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could start there because it's potentially very boring to people. I don't like it when they drop everything all at once for several reasons. It feels like some people will watch it all right away. You do kind of get a massive buzz, or maybe a couple of days, which it feels like is going on with the bear right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people maybe, have lives and watch it a little bit
Yeah.
later, and they might already feel like they've missed the point where everyone was talking
Yeah.
about the bear.
Yeah.
Um, and I also think that it makes it really rather difficult to do the kinds of things that we want to do. Write articles on these shows, hopefully dig in a bit, think them through, have a podcast like this where we're discussing it. I mean, the alternate reality where we could have had, a recap of each episode of The Bear
Mm-hmm.
once a week for the next 2 months. Just would be way preferable to me. But I know that there are people in the world who prefer to binge things, and
Yeah.
there's like no common ground.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
I am, I'm generally with you on this discussion. I prefer to space this out, have time to think, consider review, sort of think critically about what's happening in these. Even some of the models we've seen lately. I know that Disney Plus has done this. Amazon tends to do this. Maybe dropping, if you got a 10 episode season, maybe they drop 2 or 3 at the beginning to put that hook in you, and then they'll do one each week. That seems to be a popular model, but there's just not many people that do this, drop everything at once. And yes, so from a perspective of needing to create content around it, it's difficult, obviously. And then from a perspective of needing to or wanting to digest it, I just prefer to do it the other way.
I mean, it may not bother me so much, but I rarely feel like the decision is made in service of the show.
Good point.
I mean, the all at once model is sort of a Netflix model.
Yep.
And if you want to stick to that, if you're Netflix, you want to stick to that. I get it. That's expectation. People who have Netflix expect everything all at once. I don't quite know why you would do it. The middle ways you're talking about, okay, like maybe if you need more than one episode to hook people, I don't really always do. But if you feel like you do, if it was serving the content, but I have counterexamples I could bring up where it just didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Like I mentioned Raised by Wolves earlier. I'm going to plug Raised by Wolves again. Go find that somewhere. That show is great. They canceled it, and maybe they already did take it off of Max by now. Go find Raised by Wolves. It's a lot of fun. But with that one, I think they came out the gate with 2 or 3 episodes, and I was like, man, I finished the first episode and I wish they'd made me sit with that for a week, but no, you can just like press play on the next one right away. So, I don't know. Let's move on.
Yeah, it's right. They've done it. We can't do anything about it. We have to deal with it. We'll see what happens moving forward. I'll just say generally, I'm very interested in where these first 5 episodes have taken us. It is absolutely different than season 1 in terms of, I mean, clearly they're building a restaurant versus trying to serve people within a restaurant. That's the plot is clearly different, but it's a different model and structure than what we experienced in that first season last summer. And so I'm just sort of curious, have the first 5 episodes, anything stood out to you in terms of the decision making, in terms of the plot points, in terms of how the cast is mostly separated into small groups, as opposed to we were all sort of in this small kitchen last year? So what's, if anything, has stood out to you on that?
Right. Yeah. Good. So, I mean, maybe let's start with the structure because I have some
Yeah.
thoughts about that. First of all, I love it. Okay, but I'll say more. I'll go on a length about that, and then maybe we can after that dig in more on like each particular character because you're right.
Yeah.
They're largely separated. So I'm curious how you feel about this. But to answer the question first, I guess I really like it. It's the structure is really interesting to me of what they're doing here. That it is largely, um, I mean, the stories have a way of coming together, but then also existing in separation. Feels like there's a lot more space in a certain way that's giving a depth to the characters because what happens is we end up focusing on one particular character. If you think about it, I don't know if you quite have thought about it this way. It's not just episode 4, which I know you want to talk about, which focuses
Yeah.
on Marcus, but meaningfully, episode 3 focuses on Sydney,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that's actually a moment that I wanted to call attention to in particular in terms of how I think the structure of season 2 is really interesting, and I'm really liking what they're up to. They do this thing where they introduce Claire at the end of episode 2,
Mm.
right? Which I know we're going to talk about Claire. We will. And then in episode 3, Carmi gets the call from her and so on. She wants help moving. She's asking if she can use his van
Yep.
and all of that, right? Um, Now, if you're all like me, part of you is like, oh yeah, man, I want to see that, but you
Yeah.
don't get that. Instead, they follow Sydney. The rest of the episode follows Sydney. You know, they pull this move where it's like you know that Carmi is going to go and see Claire. He's going to do this thing.
Hmm.
Maybe you're like me already feeling kind of invested in this, romantic possibility between those two.
Yeah.
Maybe some people weren't. But they don't go to that. They follow Sydney. And of course, Carmi has sort of stood her up because they were supposed to go and taste food together.
Yeah.
They follow Sydney instead. So, I mean, I think I think the structure is really kind of servicing the characters well. I don't know. What are your overall thoughts
Yeah.
about this?
That's exactly how I'd put it as well. I think that so much of season one was focused on Richie and Carmi, Richie versus Carmi, Richie and Carmi and their relationship, and what they meant to one another, what they do for one another. But the writers were able to say, we've got some real stories here we can tell. And so let's take some time to do that with each one of these. As you said, Sid and sort of her journey in episode 3, Marcus, which we see in episode 4. We see a lot of Tina in episode 5, right? So we're in Ibram sort of been throughout. We're sort of seeing these pieces of who he is and who he wants or doesn't want to
Right.
be.
That's what I'm saying. I totally expect episode 6 to focus on Ibrahim.
Yeah,
People
exactly.
listening to this know already. We don't
Yeah.
know. We haven't watched it
Yeah.
yet. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
but given the structure in episode 5, you were seeing, I mean, it's kind of weird. There are questions. We were seeing Abraham. He wasn't in class.
Yep.
He's instead like sitting on the boardwalk or whatever, smoking
Yeah.
a cigar.
Exactly.
Tina hasn't talked to him. Something going on with that guy, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so far, I feel like it's been working really well. The characters were all established really well in season 1 and very immediately
Yeah.
and quickly, if you think about it, if you go back to season 1, but that we're giving a bit more space and we're getting a bit more depth. While at the same time, it's not entirely cut off from, the happenings that we keep circling
Yeah.
back to.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Richie. I think you wrote on you wrote on episode 1,
Right.
and are going to do some follow up writing so people can keep an eye out on the site TVObscast.com if you want to read things. Hope you want to read things. But you made a point of emphasis in what you wrote in episode 1 about that scene with Richie asking about purpose.
Yeah.
And maybe we should talk about that because I think you may be right that meaningfully that's kind of setting the stakes of the whole season.
Yeah, it was interesting to me. I think in the piece I compared it to, that conversation between Richie and Carmi talking about Richie wondering what his purpose is, and just hits you at the very beginning of this season, and I paralleled it to the very beginning of season 1 when before we even know what's going on here, Carmy comes face to face with this grizzly bear that's on the bridge there over the river in Chicago. And so you get this sense of, will that be what this season is about? As we started now to follow some of these characters and look at what their purpose might be. What is Sydney's? What is Tina's? What is Richie's? What is Sugar's? Obviously she's much more involved now in this season. But I just thought that conversation was interesting, and also just provided quite a bit of foreshadowing that this is what we're going to look at this season. What is the purpose of these people, and maybe how can they harness that, come together with it to build this thing?
Right. No, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And more so, or further to the piece, right? On the one hand, there's a question of like, what is their purpose in the restaurant? What is their purpose in relation to the bear, the restaurant that they're creating, and what will it be? But then at the same time, is this their purpose in a more existential sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that Richie is feeling that, which I always felt there's depth to Richie's character. He's kind of one of these blustery guys who's got a lot of bravado or whatever, but like he's got a little weeping heart in there, and that he's concerned about this, and the restaurant is a prism into that, right?
Yeah.
Because specifically, it's like, what is my purpose in relation to what we're doing here, and do I have one? And we're butting up against existential crisis territory, which is great. It's my wheelhouse. But that beyond that, it's kind of the same thing for everyone. There's a question of is this what they should be doing? Which I think continues to be a bit of a through line with Carmy himself.
Yeah.
It's also early on in the season, right, where he looks up fun in the dictionary. It's like
that's right.
Because it's like he's recognizing that he loves this, but does he have fun? Is it fun? Is there fun in his life? And I think that then the introduction of Claire makes sense in relation to that. So I don't. Maybe let's go there. How did Claire strike you? She shows up the first time at the end of episode 2, as I recall.
Yeah, she does, and I'm one. I know this is always a question about these things. I'm one that thought they had some pretty good chemistry from the very beginning, right? They had some sort of past relationship. Haven't seen each other in a long time. I think they have good chemistry. I had this question that I posed to you as to why. Trying to think, why would Carmy originally give her a wrong number? And maybe it's just that he feels like he needs to be so focused on this mission, on this goal of opening this place. But clearly she has talked him out of that, and they are moving pretty quickly into something that's a substantial relationship. And the question is, well, what happens with that? But I enjoyed Claire as a character. I enjoyed the relationship that they're building, because I think that they do well on screen together.
All right, so I have multiple thoughts here. I want to be sure to hit them all. So just noting to you, like, we're going to talk about Claire for a minute.
Yeah.
First, I do want to say, in relation to what you say, that I agree completely. I thought the chemistry was immediate. The rapport was immediate. I mean, I know that part of what fed into this was how they were framing the shots and so on.
Yes.
Was distinctive, and I'm not going to try to describe them, but to call your attention to them if you've seen it, or if you are watching it again. I'll be perfectly honest with you, Ryan. Basically, I fell in love with her immediately on Carmy's behalf. I was like, you got me. Claire's got me. I'm head over heels immediately, just from that one scene. And maybe he isn't quite, or the question about why he gives her a fake phone number. I have some thoughts about that. But first, let me ask you, did you call that number?
No, I did not. Is there something there?
No.
Oh, it was a 555, which means it's not a usable number, right? Didn't he?
No, this is no longer true. They changed things in the
world. Okay.
Right? Because everyone has to have an area code, and that complicates things. Maybe it is still true that 555s don't tend to be actually existing numbers. That's what, if you put it in your phone and call it, which I did, I got a little message that was like, your call cannot be completed as dialed, So they didn't take the opportunity for a little kind of guerrilla marketing,
right?
Which I mean, hey, but just recently there was a phone number in Yellow Jackets.
Yes, yes,
And if you called that phone number, you got content.
yep, you did.
You got, and they changed it right before the season finale too. They changed what you got. So I mean, hey, yeah, I
Oh,
called the number.
oh,
But to let people know if they didn't, yeah, there's nothing there. Why did he give her a fake number? I think that I think you're starting to get at it,
yeah,
but it comes back up again later. I think in episode 5, she asks him again.
yeah, yeah,
And this is right before they're really kind of, I don't know what the word I want is, consummating
yeah.
something. As it were.
Right.
They're on the track of that when they're at the party
Yeah,
and so on. I think putting all this together, I mean, I think there's a way in which he doesn't know
yeah,
why he gave her a fake number. He hesitates. Certainly, he must feel that chemistry we're talking about immediately. He must feel that
yeah,
rapport, that connection. It's a connection to his past, but it's something sort of good in his past in contrast to something painful. Um, so, I mean, it made sense to me what I'm trying to articulate. How I don't think it's just some thought of not feeling like he has time for love
hmm,
because of the restaurant.
yeah,
Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's some just hesitation about the idea of even thinking he deserves it or something like this.
yeah. And
Um,
maybe it goes back to, again, everything circling back to purpose, that he has this job to do in terms of what his brother left him. Does he have time to have a purpose that deviates from that, to give someone else the attention he feels like he should give to what his brother left him? I don't know. It's hard question to answer, but it seems like he's sort of, at least through 5 episodes, has made his decision on that.
yeah, here's what I want to try to say because it's very hard. Because I think what I really want to say is there is no um, justification. Both I mean this both in terms of one that would make sense to us and just people in the world in general, or one that would
Mhm.
make sense to Carmi himself.
Yeah,
I think that at the same time, it works. I believe it. I believe that he would do this.
yeah,
I get it at some level with his character, but I think it would be a mistake to imagine that he's got some well articulated line of reasoning in his own mind about why he gave her the fake number. I
yeah,
don't think he does. I think meaningfully, he does not know. He doesn't have that kind of transparency of self consciousness to know, well, I gave her, anything he'd come up with would be a kind of post hoc rationalization.
yeah.
And when she pushes on him on it, what does he say? He says something like, I like you so much, or something like
That's
that.
what he says. Yeah, that's his reason. That's his reason.
Right. So read into that as you will. Again, that I like you so much. I'm afraid I'm going to get too sucked into this and not do
Yeah,
the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. I like you so much, and I'm a piece of shit who doesn't deserve anything good in the world.
yeah, yeah.
Read into it. What
So,
you will.
so do you think, having not seen the last half of the season, do you think, we saw him or ditch Sydney on the food tour there that you referenced earlier? Do you
Mm-hmm.
think this becomes an issue where it causes a rift between him and Sid as they try to complete this job?
Well, I mean, I think that what you see in that episode is her doubting, or at least worrying. I mean, think about doubt as being in that space of uncertainty
Mm-hmm.
about Carmi as her partner in all of this. She goes around, she talks to all of these people, and that keeps kind of coming up. Do
Yeah,
you have a partner
yeah,
that you can trust?
yeah,
Do you trust him? And that it's at least kind of throwing that into question, you know. And that's sort of the point when she gets so upset about not being told they had to knock down walls and things like this. At least that's how I read that. Is that,
Yeah.
I mean, Carmi's right. Perhaps there's no other choice. There's no real reason why she needed to be consulted. But it's
Yeah.
one of those things like, well, but are we really in this together? And if you really believe we were in this together, of
Yeah.
course you would have felt like you had to talk to me about it, and you didn't. That sort of
Yeah.
thing. So I don't know. I mean, I think that in some ways, in response to your question, it's central to what's
Hmm.
going to be going on in this season because it's a central thing of um Sydney and Carmi making
Yeah.
this restaurant together. It's his restaurant, but it's her restaurant,
Yeah.
you but I don't think I predict like a schism.
Right. Right.
I predict more dramatic tension, I guess. I
Yeah.
don't know. What about you?
Yeah, that's the way I read it as well. That there will be some tension. Maybe it seems manufactured, maybe not, as part of this relationship. But clearly, there are going to be more headaches and misunderstandings ahead with the opening of this place. But I think inevitably, it's my read on it. My guess is that it's going to make Carmi and Sydney understand that this has to be a strong partnership. It has to be something where they do this together. They can't do it in sort of separate modes or in separate roads. They have to. I mean, they must be almost foundationally connected in every piece of it. And I think that they're sort of setting this up to say, okay, they're going to realize that at some point. How do they get there? Well, it may take this sort of thing that looks like it might divide them, but eventually they get to that point.
Yeah, interesting. At least I hope so. I kind of presume so because I don't think
Yeah.
the Bear is going to give us a tragic ending to season two.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Which it could. I mean,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
there's that the narrative path would be that they try to do this, they utterly fail,
Yeah.
everyone's sad, series over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe someone dies too, right? I mean, but I don't think that's where this show is
Yeah.
going, and I think you're right. And the other aspects of this too that I know we wanted to hit on with we mentioned Richie briefly.
Yes.
There's also stuff with Sugar or
Yes.
Natalie, um, and I mean, I really enjoy her character. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I actually think she is doing an amazing job this season. I enjoyed her when she was on Saturday Night Live. She's a pretty funny character, but this is just a complete dramatic turn that I just didn't know was in her wheelhouse.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, my favorite. I love the scene when Uncle Jimmy comes and he's like giving them shit, and when she turns on the oh, it's me. I just didn't know what to do, and
Yeah, yeah.
Jimmy, that bit. Oh my god! Because as she's walking out of the room with him, she's like turning to Richie, going, "Shut up." Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a brilliant, because what I think what that really shows is she is fully aware that what she's doing in that moment
Yeah.
is emotionally manipulating Uncle Jimmy,
Right.
basically, right?
Right.
To the benefit of the restaurant, and yeah, I mean, I've been enjoying her role in this a lot. I did in season one too, but I like to see her in the mix of it. I don't know, we're talking about purpose. Does it make sense for Natalie to be doing this? I mean, I guess
Yeah.
she's still kind of not fully committed to the idea that she's the project manager, but I also love how the guys refer to her as mom. I think that's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You told mom.
Well,
But
and I don't think we haven't seen Pete, her husband, yet this year
that's
or
what I was
this
going to say.
season.
We haven't seen her husband. Where's he doing? Does he know
So
she's
I just
pregnant?
don't. Yeah, she is,
Does
and
her
just in
husband
terms
know
of
she's pregnant? That guy's sort of a
yeah,
doofus. Does he know she's pregnant?
I,
It's
yeah.
possible she doesn't. He doesn't know.
I just don't think she sees her purpose being the life that she had with him. She wants to be part of this family, of this community. So even though she's reluctant to do it, it hates the experience and hates what's happening. She sees it as sort of, this is sort of who I want to be with, and this is the people I'm going to confide in that I'm pregnant. We have no idea if Pete knows or not.
Yeah, exactly. He is kind of a doofus. So I mean, what I expect from the structure that's laid out, and this might be totally wrong, and again, people listening will have already seen it, and probably I'm going to go watch it tonight and look back and go, oh, I was an idiot.
Yeah.
But almost what I would expect from how they're mapping out the season is that in the latter half, we'll get an Ibrahim episode, we'll get a Sugar episode,
Yeah.
you know, and then I don't know what else. Again, I don't necessarily mean something that's somehow entirely focused on this one character,
Yeah.
but kind of like Lost, which we talked about it before, to where one character is really in the spotlight, and I sort of expect that will be the case here.
Yeah. You want to touch on any of these other characters quickly before we wrap up the first half of the season?
Yeah, let's circle back around to on this point. Circle back around to episode 4, the Marcus episode, which we wanted to talk about. How did this one land for you in particular? It's kind of its own self-contained story.
Yeah, I'll be honest. My first thought was, well, you can tell when a show has become a breakout hit when they could afford to send a crew and actors over to Copenhagen for weeks to film an episode. That was sort of my initial cynical thought to this. But no, I as a fan of what Marcus did and who it looked like he wanted to be in season 1, I enjoyed him getting to take part in something like this, and also loved the interaction with Will. With Will Poulter, I just thought that was a phenomenal sort of pairing there, as sort of mentor and student. So I enjoyed it. It took us a little bit away from what we're trying to accomplish. I enjoyed that episode quite a bit.
I thought it was nice. It was meditative. It really kind of gave it some depth to Marcus. You've got the scene where he's rescuing the biker, which I don't know. I read that as just kind of showing that he's a good guy. I don't know if it's going to tie into anything. Did you have any other?
I found it odd.
Scene?
Yeah, I found that an odd thing to throw in, but again, just he is committed to and motivated to do what's right. He's committed to motivated to do whatever it takes to make something right. And we've seen that when he was so hyper focused on his donuts and his stuff in season 1. But maybe just that he has got this thing inside of him with his mother that we've seen now in the first few episodes, with this guy who was injured. He's got purpose and he knows what he wants to do. He knows what he wants to do, but he's not going to let it sort of distract him from maybe the person that he is. And maybe that comes into play later, right? Maybe there's some sort of decision he has to make with his mother being so sick, and something that he has to do with the restaurant, and he has to come into a decision between those two things. Maybe just sort of setting the stage for what type of person he is when he's forced to make that decision.
Yeah, I sort of hope not, because I my hope is that this isn't that show.
Yeah.
It would almost be a cliched sort of thing to move this in the direction of, his mother's sick. Oh, now Marcus has to make a choice. Is he really going to pursue his dream, or is he going to care for his sick and dying mother?
Yeah.
I don't think they're quite going in that way. I think they're sort of nicely playing instead with the idea that, look, we have our dreams, we're pursuing them. You can pursue them. You can find the purpose in being really, really good at something, or striving to be. And if it's making, desserts, that's awesome, actually. And then you have that nice long conversation. And it doesn't mean that you have to, neglect caring about people. Okay, so I guess we'll leave it there for this time. Thanks again for listening to the TV Obsessive podcast. Cameron Crane, Ryan Kirksley has encountered some technical difficulties, so we are kind of cutting this a little bit shorter than intended. I do think we were wrapping up. For what it's worth, either way, we do intend to spend our next podcast continuing to discuss The Bear Season 2. That will be probably in about a week from now. And work on getting that out as soon as we can. In the meantime, please do read the website, TVObsessive.com. You can follow the site on Twitter, on Facebook, also now on Instagram. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you might get podcasts. You can find it on YouTube. If you want to check out the YouTube channel, it's the TV Obsessive YouTube channel. You can find these things. And so we'll leave it there for this time. Apologies for encountering a little technical hiccup here. You're left with me to wrap things up. Ryan will be back with me next time, and we'll see you again. Thanks for listening.